news for this week. Now we're going to move on and do a review of Darth Vader and the Ghost Prison. So, like I said at the beginning of this episode, we want to do one of these once a month, and we'll tell you guys in the future which one we're going to be reading because we would like to treat this as a book club. So, we're going to read a variety of Star Wars Legends books and comics to kind of bring at Legends presence to our channel more so, and we'll do a review for them once a month, maybe talk non-spoilers for some of it and then spoilers for some of it, kind of like we do our normal book reviews, but just to have a bit more of our thoughts on Legends out there because we really don't have much of our thoughts on Legends on our channel outside of like the How to Adapt series or stuff like that. So here we go. Darth Vader in the Ghost Prison. So this is written by Hayden Blackman and is drawn by Augustine Alessio. The art is fantastic in this. I think that to me is the best part of the whole thing. It has a very interesting story, and the Ghost Prison itself is a really cool concept that I think would be really interesting in a modern Star Wars context. I think especially as we start to explore in the Bad Batch a lot of the formation of the Empire and how the Empire converts assets from the Republic over to the Empire and how it really transforms everything that was there and the politics of like, okay, we were the Republic, now we're the Empire. We're trying to find that identity for those people who are living on certain planets or in certain factions. I think all of that are really cool concepts that they could still bring in. Like I could see this being an episode or two episodes of the Bad Batch and changed a little bit up to where the Bad Batch get trapped on or get they're fleeing the Empire and they go, oh, we know this old prison that used to be out there that's holding uh, separatist prisoners, and they end up stuck there and fighting their way through. I think that would be really cool. So there's a lot of cool concepts here that are still relevant and still not contradicted by canon completely. There's also some great flashbacks with Anakin Skywalker talking about his relationship with the council and like I think this is a really, really solid comic. To me, the art does a little overshadow the story. Like the story's good, but the art is like absolutely incredible. I love the dark shadowing in this. There's so much shadowing, and really, the characters are also fascinating. The main character is quite interesting character, but it is a one-off character. But yeah, I really like this book.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with all those points. The art is what drew me in the first place. I was just looking at just old comics and I was like, yeah, this looks kind of nice. Just I think the one thing about old Dark Horse comics is that either you had amazingly beautiful art like this, Star Wars Legacy and the like, or you had really hard to like push through art of like 90s Dark Horse with like Tales of the Jedi and just it's not the prettiest thing. I love a lot of that stuff and I love what they were attempting, but sometimes the art just it was hard to like look at and read a story through. So they were a little bit more extreme in that sense. Marvel is, I think, on average, much better with its art. I still don't love in the 2015 line when we did the hyper realistic photo stills of the movies placed on the characters' heads and then mixing that in with original characters. It never really worked for me. I just don't think that's how comic art should look like in my mind. That obviously someone believes that, but that's just it just never worked for me personally. But this is an art style that feels like it's grounded in the realism of the aesthetics of both the prequels and the originals trilogy and how they're merging together. But truly just a comic. Like you said, the shadows are very strong. The lighting of the sky, it's kind of hard to replicate something like that in with 3D CGI and with all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think the core story of like the Gentis coup, of like the headmaster of this one academy that's overseeing all of these academies that are merging together. It makes a lot of sense even now with canon of like you can't just rely on these clone troopers necessarily. You still need so many humans to just start flooding the market or flooding all these sectors. And it makes sense to just like they even directly address it. Like usually we take years, but you guys are only taking like months, and it's because the only thing you have to really think about is are you loyal to the empire or not? That's all that matters. And yeah, I think other than the art, what really impressed me was the main character, Loria Tom. Obviously, visually a different character than we really see in Star Wars. A human with half of his face burned off and one of his pupils just turned white from a little Clone Wars incident, and he's missing a whole arm. So he's not exactly the most able-bodied person as a protagonist that we've seen in Star Wars, but he goes through a journey that I really do enjoy. Like you said, the idea of the ghost prison and all that, I want to see something like that uh, in the Bad Batch or any sort of canon sort of story. But what really drew me in was because of Lorita. He's just so dedicated, and that dedication to what he really wants, like, respect, fear, loyalty, all these qualities that he doesn't think all his classmates really get, even though he tries his best to share that with them. He's always been underestimated, never been seen as like more than just a valedictorian, maybe a valedictorian because of his looks more than his skills. And he really does get to showcase them. And he showcases them by immediately connecting himself after this whole plot just that he's excluded from, of course. But because he's disconnected from him, he becomes like the only person capable of doing anything about it, who has at least any sort of insight on what's going on with his old headmaster that he respected, with his friends, this and that. And he walks right into Vader and submits his loyalty wholly, which I think was not like something we haven't seen before. But I think the way they've handled Vader in that moment moved forward is probably one of my favorite things about the series, because I think a lot of even Marvel Star Wars series is that when Vader starts showing up, he is the main character. But a story like this, where he's still very young into his life as a Vader, where he's just a brutal killing machine, I thought they really handled that well, especially with how Lorita like interacts with him. And he doesn't become anything more than a supporting character until the very end of the series, basically the last few pages, which I really appreciated. I guess there's some moments with the Jedi Council stuff that we see where we get to see his holograms of Anakin and the Jedi Council. But it's just nice and refreshing to see Vader be that mask, be emotionless, be that dark one that everyone looks at and is scared of. And how they interact with that is a reflection of them more so Vader himself, like him actually actively doing anything. So I really enjoy that part. I do think to a degree that this should have been more than a mini series. I think a lot of the story elements are so rich that they can go further. Unfortunately, Lorita, it has to be a tragic end for him at the end of the day because it is a mini series. But if this was like a 10-issue series, I would have loved this. This is the same thing that I felt with Trail of Shadows. There's some depth, there's some richness, there's something absolutely new and unique about this story, especially when it came out. I'm sure it was even more satisfying for readers, but it just has to end so quickly, and the essential plot beats happen, and you're like, okay, that's great. And then it just becomes carried by the art, like you said. But I'm not really complaining. I really did enjoy this series.
Yeah, I agree. I think most of the time when we have miniseries, they're very rarely Star Wars miniseries that when you're done with it, you're like, that was perfect length. It doesn't need any more. It wasn't rushed. I think, especially because this one has so many different plot points going on, and that's a kind of a problem too with sometimes with Legends books is they try to tie into so many different things and try to loosely be connected to the Legends universe, but also
Oh
try to
yeah.
do their own thing, that they always are bogged down by something or they're creating a little plot point here and there. I think the also the politics of that the guy who's running the academy, forgot his name, but him defecting and using his students as kind of a means to try to start a revolution there in the empire. I think it's nice to see early rebellion groups kind of just early. It mirrors a little bit more of the canon version of the rebellion, where it's people rebelling all across before there's actually any real alliance
Yeah.
till very late in the game. So I like all that, and again, that could this story has and it was written post the first 5 seasons of Clone Wars, so it does kind of parallel a lot of some of the more canon stuff we've seen rather than early Legends stuff. But I think it still has a lot of applications for canon still today. and I think it's definitely worth your time reading. I also really like the main character because we've seen in Star Wars comics recently, they've never really given us in film or anything an actual companion for Vader, really. He kind of just does
Mm.
his own thing. He either has like Tarkin, who he kind of sees as an equal, but is technically above him. In the comics recently, he's had Afra or he's had Ochi, but he doesn't, they're all obviously
Tanhot, don't forget about
subordinate to him.
Tanhot.
Yeah,
Inspector
but
Tanhot too,
but
yeah.
he has a lot of these characters are either rivals or they're companions, and like this one's kind of both. And I like that this character is both until he's not needed anymore. I think that's a really cool idea for Vader. So yeah, again, great comic series. We'll finish off these book club episodes with a rating. So I guess a score out of 5, like we usually do for our other book reviews. I want to give it a 4, but I think I'm going to give it a 3.5 because I like this book a lot. The art's fantastic. It's the most memorable part for me is the art rather than the story, but it does have good characters and some good concepts that I would love to see translated into canon in the future.
Yeah, no, I think if there's a Legends or later Legends period book or comic to pick up, this would be fantastic as just like an entryway into older media. Um, and aligns more obviously, like we said, Clone Wars and all these canon sensibilities that are canon, but were also legends back then. That little overlap. It's so close to being really good, just like Trail of Shadows for me, like being amazing. There's a lot of things that happen, a lot of things I feel like they're referencing old Clone Wars comics too, because they're doing so much and have to hit every single plot beat. A lot of the stuff that I wish could have been developed isn't, and needed 10 issues. That's in my mind, that would have been a perfect length for this, which gives me a 3.5 out of 5 star rating.
All right, great. So that wraps up our latest episode, episode 60 of Star Wars Lads, as well as our first review for the Star Wars Lads Legends Book Club. So next month we'll do Splinter of the Mind's Eye is what we're going to be talking about. It's the first ever Star Wars Legends book that takes place after A New Hope. We'll be talking about that next month. Stay tuned for our review of that. And thank you all so much for watching. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button down below. Subscribe to the channel for Star Wars content minimum 3 days a week. If you haven't checked out our other 2 videos, please check them out. And then comment below. Let us know what you thought of Darth Vader in the Ghost Prison and or any of the stories we talked about today. Shadow of the Sith, what are your impressions of that excerpt and that cover? Let us know if you're excited for that down below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.